What are the moral dimensions of obesity? That is the question for this video. Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Perspective Philosophy, where we try to better our perceptions of the world through philosophical discussion. Today we are going to be discussing the moral dimensions of obesity. Now, obesity is a complicated issue. It has many twists and turns in which the individual and society are both involved. The connection between the individual and society is vitally important because we are now living in what is now being claimed an obesity epidemic, where we are being we're all fat, right? We're all fat, we're all obese. Come on, we need to get together, guys. I'm fat, you're fat, he's fat, she's fat, they're fat. You know, everyone's fat. And we need to get that sorted. I want everyone to know that this video is not meant to be an attack. This video is meant to uplift those who are facing horrible circumstances and help them get away from what could cause crippling disease. An important issue to also recognize is that in a moral discourse, you need free will. You need to be able to act differently for me to tell you that you should act differently, for you to understand that you can act differently. If you are determined by medical features, let's say a disease or disability such as type 1 diabetes or an underactive thyroid, or something that forces you to gain weight faster than everyone else, or a medication that perhaps influences this, well, this moral discourse isn't going to be exactly dead on for you. It doesn't necessarily remove all moral consideration, and I'll get onto that later on, but it does vitally impact this conversation in regards to you and your particular health. This is a general conversation on the topic of obesity. So why is obesity a moral issue? Obesity is a moral issue because of this epidemic status. Now, if one or two people were obese, I don't think anyone would really care so much. Although it would have moral significance to those individuals, it wouldn't have societal ramifications, which is why it's become such a hot topic in the media these days.
At the dawn of the 21st century, there is one last unexplored territory left on Earth. It's a place of awesome spectacle and of terrifying life and death battles between man and nature. And where is this place? It's inside Barry, Austin.
I would first like to point out that I do believe in universal healthcare, and that includes people who are suffering from obesity. I would not be arguing for cutting these people out, and I will get on to the argument that starts to push that way in a minute. The first dimension I would like to delve into with the topic of obesity is the individual's responsibility towards themselves. An individual who is obese will face a much greater risk in regards to diseases. They will face a risk of diabetes, of fatty liver disease, of strokes, heart attacks. The list is nearly endless. Increased risk of cancer even. So when we talk about a moral discourse in regards to obesity, I think the first place we should start is why we can see ourselves as morally expendable, why we are able to relinquish our responsibility towards our own health when we would not do that to other people.
544 pounds.
I weigh about 460 pounds.
I am prisoner in my own body.
My biggest fear, just dying like this.
Now, a good way to look at this is, would you feed your child or loved one the food that you feed yourself? Would you allow them to become as sick as you allow yourself to become for desire? Would you let them be so self-destructive? And would you say that as healthy? So in regards to the individual's moral responsibility towards themselves, I think this has to be pointed towards health. Not a beauty standard. There is no exact size that you should be, no exact weight, no exact shape in general that you need to emulate, but rather your physical health. So if you are healthy and you are on the higher side of your BMI, that is great. As long as you are healthy, that is your moral considerability sorted towards yourself. So in regards to the individual's moral responsibility towards themselves, I think it's vitally important to understand that you cannot be wholly moral without treating yourself as an equal. So a good way to look at it is that in Buddhist ethics, they tend to see themselves as selfless and totally morally unbiased, and yet understand themselves to be affected by their own actions. So when they act in the world, they should treat themselves with equal moral discourse as they would treat someone else. And that is something that Buddha would do, as well as, the Bodhisattva, because without treating yourself as equal to one, then you are not being morally consistent. The other issue of the individual's responsibility is this topic of healthcare. Can we just claim more money in healthcare costs for our personal choices?
Obesity costs this country about $150 billion a year, or almost 10% of the national medical budget. Approximately 1 in 3 adults and 1 in 6 children are obese.
So we cannot deny that increased food consumption leading to obesity and this subjective choice is indeed causing an objective problem for society. An obesity epidemic is the result of an individual's actions on a mass scale. So masses of individuals are choosing to act a certain way, and that is costing the taxpayer an increased amount of money. Of course, you could then say that they should pay more towards their taxes. However, I think there is a few arguments against this. The first one being, we need to delve into why people are acting this way. So if you're acting this way because you're poor and perhaps fatty, convenient food is what you can afford, and you're working 2 jobs and you haven't got time to prepare food, well then perhaps it's not you to blame, and increasing the cost on you will really just worsen your situation, and it might actually make the epidemic worse. You might take it as, okay, well, I can afford to pay an extra £10 a month on healthcare, but I haven't got the time to, prepare this food. And so then you work harder to pay for the healthcare and eat more convenience food, and then you're in a vicious cycle in which you're actually making your healthcare worse. So seeing this as a solution isn't the case. Also, it would lead to an insurance-based system in which individuals would pay increased premiums towards their risk factors, which are their actions. So what you end up then is, if you drink, you're going to pay more money. If you smoke, you're going to pay more money, etc. And what we'll have to analyze is why the psychology of individuals who do this. And we should not be isolating the poor from healthcare, as it is a fundamental need in society and should be universally available. In a society where we have excess, there is no justification in isolating those from having any subjectivity at all. If you are going to have to work to pay for your food, water and shelter and your healthcare, you will be determined by your social situation inherently, and therefore society will be undemocratic. I will happily discuss this issue in another video in which we talk about wealth distribution and redistribution. Now, here's the real topic in which I really want to get my teeth stuck into here, and that is the effect of society on the individual. So what responsibility does society have to the individual? Since this is an epidemic, in which case 60% of the UK's population is considered overweight, I think we need to understand that this is not just an individual's choice being made out of maybe gluttony, but rather we should understand this as a question of why our society is choosing to consume these foods, which are clearly causing us suffering, not only in causing us to pay more taxes, but also causing us, possible death. So let's look into that. And the first issue really is the advertising and the marketing of unhealthy food. Unhealthy food is advertised and marketed to hundreds of people every day.
Mum,
Yes, love?
what was Dad like?
He was big and cuddly, your dad. Tall as an house, with big, big hands.
Dad played football, didn't
Yeah, he was good.
he? He liked techno.
Yeah, he was a right catch, your dad. A wow with all the girls. Thanks, Phil. What was your dad's favourite, too?
The most likely reason most of our loved ones will die is heart disease.
Eating more can even save you money. You can get a Subway meal deal, which it would cost you more to not take the bag of crisps. So how does that even make sense? And what we'll have to understand is that in a consumerist society, the promotion is on constant consumption. We are promoted to consume as much as possible. They might put in small print, 10 servings are in this packet, but they know that this food is actually addictive. And I don't mean necessarily addictive in the additives where you've got things like MSGs, but I mean even in things like salt, oil and sugar. These refined foods cause a psychological effect on the individual. You are already addicted to certain neurochemicals in your brain, and anything related to their release can become addictive. Now, a way to change this is through habit, and that will be towards the end of the video, but that does not excuse the deliberate advertising of these products and deliberate promotion of these products to individuals who will then have to free themselves of a possible addiction. Also, then there is convenience. How is it that the food that just happens to be the most unhealthy food you could possibly eat is also the most convenient food? It's the cheapest food and it's just ready to hand. You can go out and you can go and get a McDonald's so quick, and there is no healthy options available. Now, many people will point to an invisible hand theory that controls markets, or even a hidden hand theory in which Nozick says is, like something creating something in the background. But regardless, the effect it is having is detrimental to society, and it's something that we need to address, whether it's through affecting the legislation we have on these businesses, or perhaps even not supplementing these businesses economically through taxpayers' money like we do with the meat and dairy industry. We need to challenge this social norm in which the most easy, convenient food is actually the worst food for the individual. Finally, we need to look at the psychological effect our society is having on individuals. Why is it that so many individuals in our society are eating these foods when they know they are bad for them?
When I was a child, we were very poor, and we couldn't eat healthy food. We couldn't afford healthy food.
I've had a rough road down the line. I've had my son without his daddy. I haven't been happy. I used to be a lucky go person. I used to go out karaoke, and I don't know, I started having trouble when I was young. It seemed like I started picking up the weight more.
My mom says her weight began to increase after giving birth to me. And over the years, I felt a lot of blame for that.
The reality is that most people are just sublimating the pain of their lives. If you're under constant stress from work, if you're struggling to run a family as a single mother, if you're doing all of these different stressful tasks day to day, and there's nowhere for you to turn, if there is no social pressure release, then what you're going to do is you're going to turn to something that will bring you immediate gratification in order to free yourself from the suffering you're constantly feeling. You're going to need something that's going to lift your mood, and what better than a bar of chocolate? I mean, Galaxy shows you that, right? What better than a tub of ice cream when you've just broke up with your boyfriend? Yeah? Why is it that we are socialized to associate these foods with, happiness, but also that we will turn to these foods as a pressure release? And perhaps things can be done to modify social dynamics in society that could perhaps free the individual from the psychological distress they are constantly feeling that is putting them in a situation that is causing this overconsumption. So what is the solution, you might ask? You might be like, Lewis, please tell me, how can I free myself from this obese society? And the solution is unfortunately not a pleasant one. Institutional change takes time. So if we want to change our corporate interests in society and, the way that we're approaching healthcare and things like that, well, that's going to take a lot of time and a lot of thought going into how we can restructure society. Now, what is more immediate is what the individual can do themselves. You can choose, regardless of how addicted you necessarily are, so long as you're capable of rationality, you can choose to eat something different. You can choose to have a healthy meal. Now, this is going to come with a little bit more effort and some food prep to try and, escape, the convenience part. But it's also going to come up with making recipes that you're willing to eat and trying to experiment and try and make healthy food that you enjoy, that you can eat, and that will allow you to free yourself from obesity and, the obesity epidemic we're in. It will allow you to treat yourself with greater moral consideration. You will be more morally considerate to others, and it will relieve the strain on the healthcare system that will inevitably spend its money on someone else, who is also drastically needing healthcare. So it's a win-win-win, okay? That is why mindful consumption is always vitally important within our society. In a society where endless consumption is promoted to you, you should reject it and choose objective freedom over subjective freedom, which is what you can check out my last video to find out the crack. And as always, try to gain some perspective.